Medical disclaimer. The content of this video is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition, and always get proper treatment for serious medical conditions. Legal disclaimer. Use only legal measures to combat the virus and cooperate with government officials, first responders and healthcare workers to make the coronavirus a thing of the past and create a perfect society ASAP. Use common sense, logic and help your fellow humans if necessary, also to lower the risk of being vaccinated mandatorily ourselves and to end the pandemic as soon as possible. The objective of my videos is not to slander people nor to incite or trigger people, but to do the opposite, exposing it when people are wrongly accused, and to create universal peace, world peace or just peace on earth. People are innocent till proven guilty in the court of law. One who knows of evidence must testify, not to convict anyone without a fair trial. Greetings, superior beings, greetings, supreme being. We are all the human race. Our common enemy is death. Welcome on Perfect Society. I'm Ulrich Hoffman, and this is the broadcast. Ankle bracelets used to track COVID-19, quote, patients, unquote, equals surveillance, equals slaves were forced to wear masks. Loads of info in this interesting broadcast for you all, and I'm going to start with some web pages, and I also made an interesting picture slideshow. We see Bill Gates, and look at the top book of, I'll get into that later. Here you can see who Bill Gates is funding. Idiots. The Saul Alinsky model, George Soros, sponsoring Hillary. CDC childhood immunization schedule. How to Lie with Statistics is the book on top. And other people have covered this, so people can Google everything that we're talking and covering, that we're talking about and covering in this program. So let's get to Opera browser. Let's see what I've prepared for this program. First off, I would like to remind people of this video. Correlation between lockdown measures and deaths from all causes. CV measures cause deaths? Question mark. And it has important information. So there are scientists that claim there will be more deaths from the disproportionate, thus unconstitutional coronavirus measures than from the SARS-CoV-2 virus that causes COVID-19. And I've covered it in this broadcast. So, correlation between lockdown measures and deaths from all causes. CV measures cause deaths, yes. And we see that in all these documents, if they load. I had to restart this broadcast because my Open Broadcaster software crashed. It was very weird. I used studio mode for a more professional show, and it crashed, so it was very weird. Oh yeah, and I really wanted to start with something else.
In 4 months, the US was transformed into an obedient socialist country.
So if you haven't seen it, I've also covered it on my channel. It's just a mask, the deepfake video. And the software is pretty easy to find, but it's pretty hard to make such a deepfake video. So because things are moving fast towards total generated COVID-19 Armageddon, I'm not taking the time to create more deepfake videos, but I made another interesting Trump video I can advise you all to watch. It's really quite good. Let's see if it loads. The computer is super slow today, that's annoying. Just trying to load my own channel. UK government concerned over deaths that could be caused by COVID lockdown. One model suggests the restrictions may raise non-coronavirus mortality significantly on ft.com, Financial Times. Unicef also made it clear that coronavirus measures cause more deaths than the virus itself, more than COVID-19, as model predicts 1.2 million child deaths. And right now there are still, I think, less than 600,000 COVID-19 deaths. I usually use worldometers.info. Telegraph.co.uk reports about Unicef. And Health Policy-Watch.news reports COVID-19 lockdowns could lead to 1.4 million more tuberculosis deaths, but the solution is, quote, not rocket science, unquote. Then a PDF, impact of lockdown on COVID-19 incidence and mortality in China, an interrupted time series study. I haven't read it myself, but I add the link. I don't know if it's any good. Interview how COVID-19 could undo years of progress in the developing world, telegraph.co.uk. So this is on researchgate.net, and I'll just put the link in the description of the video when I'm done with the video. And when people write stuff in the chat, that's great, especially links, information, truthful and accurate information about the population reduction, and not censoring anyone. So if I give people a wrench, if I make you a moderator, then please don't censor anything people write. I can do that myself if necessary, but I want to know their opinion and what they really think. Coronavirus lockdown may spur surge in mental illness, UN warns. Childhood disease may also soar as the pandemic claims millions of indirect victims by blocking access to medical care, the New York Times reported. So then I'd have to create an account if I'd want to read the article. There are other ways, but we're not going to do that now because I'm moving towards the subject of this video. COVID-19 is deadly, and so is keeping millions of people out of work. QZ.com reports Quartz. Come on, Israel. 21c.org reports lockdown only made corona crisis worse. Lockdown only made coronavirus worse. Lockdown only made corona crisis worse, claim experts. Okay, Israeli professor's mathematical model shows quarantine effects more damaging than the disease, which could better be controlled by precautions. There was also a Nobel Prize winner that claimed the same, and an Israeli professor, etc. So that's covered more in depth in a broadcast on my channel. Let's get to the videos. Correlation between lockdown measures and deaths from all causes. CV measures cause deaths. The video I showed in the beginning. It's this one. And I really need more views and more people to sign the petition. We are getting to that one. So then this is the next one. That's for later, basically. Opponents claim GPS monitoring violates civil rights. Judges not so sure, on WPR.org. Parallel GPS ankle monitors, major flaws found in vendor system, LATimes.com reported. 31st of March 2013. So that's about 7 years ago. And this video basically shows that statistic that is used. So that's from the website medium.com. Surprisingly, however, these increases did not begin before the lockdowns were imposed, but after. Moreover, in almost every case, so that's about increase in deaths from all causes, as you can see here. Every time after the lockdown measures are introduced, there's a spike in the number of deaths from all causes. So let's read it with the speech and text-to-speech engine. So I pressed search by accident because they're blocking the text-to-speech engine.
Surprisingly, however, these increases did not begin before the lockdowns were imposed, but after. Moreover, in almost every case, they began immediately after. Often, mortality numbers were on a downward trend before suddenly reversing course after lockdowns were decreed.
So as we can see on this image, perhaps it's faster if I do it like this, otherwise I have to search. Let's see if I have it ready. Lockdown spike in cases. Okay, then this is a little bit better. So this image shows that the number of cases were often going down until and right before the lockdown measures were imposed. So they were already going down again. And we see that on lots of these illustrations of the deaths from all causes, these charts. So you can see with Italy, for example, Austria was also going down already. England and Wales. But that's not visible with all of them. Denmark also. So I'm figuring out which line to watch basically. So the grayed outlines are versus recent years, so that's previous years. And the other line shows, the thick line shows the number of deaths per week from all causes. Death rates have climbed far above historical averages in many countries that have faced COVID-19 outbreaks. So if I check them one by one, Austria was keeping steady basically. So that wasn't, well, we've had a spike there in Austria basically, if you see the left top graph chart. So there was a peak and that went down and then it was stable, and then they introduced these measures. And then we see the spike, but that's only a little spike in the case of Austria. And then we look at Belgium. And it was sort of a straight line, but it came from a higher number, so it went down a little bit. And then March 13, the lockdown was introduced, and then we see the spike in cases. In Denmark, it was also steadily going down until March 11, when the lockdown was imposed. There was a spike in deaths from all causes. And I've also covered the fact that the lockdown measures have a negative effect on people's immune system, according to several scientists. And it's very well possible that people are lying about this. Also, they're lying about 5G, the fact that 5G radiation exposure is a health hazard. And that's why these real scientists want a moratorium on 5G and on the electroporation, electropermeabilization, vaccines. that make pores in people's cells so the virus can enter their cells, and the same is achieved with 5G, that increases people's cell membrane permeability. It's covered more in depth in my previous broadcasts, so check them on Perfect Society on YouTube. England and Wales was going down, March 20th lockdown, spike in cases, etc. So I'm not going to cover them all, I've covered this in a previous broadcast, but I haven't looked in depth at the number of cases going down before the spike after the lockdown measures are introduced. So that's known to the scientists that these lockdown measures have a negative effect on people's immune system. The ankle bracelet articles, so people can check this out on medium.com, questions for lockdown apologists. I think very important article, also covered by the YouTuber The Last American Vagabond. And then we can move on to the next thing. COVID-19 patients and their families are being put on police enforced lockdown, reason.com, and this was in April, 8th of April 2020, so it's about 3 months ago, and reddit.com, I might not cover that, I don't know if that's alright. To keep COVID-19 patients home, some US states weigh house arrest tech. COVID-19 _ surveillance on Wikipedia, the CIA Vatican edited encyclopedia. COVID-19 surveillance involves monitoring the spread of the coronavirus disease in order to establish the patterns of disease progression. And here we see dailymail.co.uk, dailymail.co.uk. Kentucky couple are put under house arrest and forced to wear ankle monitors for refusing to sign a self-quarantine order despite testing positive for coronavirus after a trip to Michigan. I would argue it's unconstitutional, also because tests are inaccurate, flawed, you could argue. You could even argue they shouldn't be used with such a mild virus, that it's threatening their lives. Louisville is forcing unwilling coronavirus patients to self-isolate. Is it right? And what's the point when they don't have a cure? And these ventilators, respirators, whatever they call them, ventilators, I think, intubation in the hospital, on the ICU, intensive care units, that leads to more deaths as well and damages the lungs, according to the scientists, because of the pressure on the lungs because of intubation and ventilation. This is on eu.courier-journal.com. And oh yes, this is a great channel. Check out Vernon Coleman, Dr. Vernon Coleman, 125,000 subscribers, great videos, and there's also a song. I can check that fast. I've typed it in on Virtual DJ, usually that's a lot faster. Vernon Coleman's song, Stand Up for Truth. I think it has healing properties. Awesome, awesome. So real doctors, real scientists also exist. If you think that you've gone mad, watch Dr. Vernon Coleman on YouTube. Vernon Coleman. Dr. Vernon Coleman. PCR test unreliable. False negatives, how accurate are PCR tests for COVID-19? Even when we Google it, and then see in the common questions, look at the common questions, how accurate is the coronavirus test? The test is not 100% accurate. At present, it is thought to detect approximately 70% of coronavirus infections. 70%, people! So, watch out. But that on the side, we can go to the ankle article. Let's use picture slideshow, ankle braces tracking, about the slavery association with masks. During the 16th to 19th centuries, slaves were forced to wear dirt-eater masks to prevent them from committing suicide. It is written on History Asia Entertainment website. There were also some speculations that the mask might have been designed to stop the slaves from eating the crops of their owners. I think that's a lot more logical. I have my doubts about the dirt eating story, possibly to commit suicide. And people can Google this so they can find the information for themselves. That's the source that I had on the chat remark. So I thought let's take that along, because many people are talking about rituals, ritual masks, mask, seek red, etc., adrenocorona, gav idiots. Okay. Well then. COVID-19 is deadly, and so is keeping millions of people out of work. That's an important point. But we want to get to the articles about the tracking bracelets. To keep COVID-19 patients home, some US states weigh house arrest tech. Already read that. This one may have the best picture on reason.com, so perhaps it's best if I start with this one, read it, and then let you know what I think about it. I'm also going to check the chat in the meantime. So, here we go.
Coronavirus. COVID-19 patients and their families are being put on police-enforced lockdown, from doxing people with the new coronavirus to making diagnosed and suspected patients wear ankle monitors. Some states are taking all the wrong steps to slow the spread of COVID-19. Elizabeth Nolan Brown, April 8, 2022, 15 p.m. Pafotostwo790874, Suzanne Proch /TPA/Picture Alliance /Newscom. How should governments in the U.S. handle COVID-19 patients, their families, and those with whom they've recently interacted? How about potential patients unable to get tested or awaiting test results? In countries that have quickly and effectively slowed the spread of the new coronavirus, authorities have subjected residents to what many Americans would deem extreme and invasive test and trace measures. Some are opt-in, like Singapore's Trace Together app. In South Korea, officials rely on tracking methods citizens can't opt out of, such as cell phone location data and electronic purchases. Meanwhile, China requires everyone to download an app that displays a color-coded contagion risk level. These places tend to be pretty upfront about freedom and security trade-offs. In the US, however, authorities often pay lip service to liberty and avoid more moderate safety measures while simultaneously making brave new forays into violating people's privacy and civil rights. In Kentucky, people who've tested positive for COVID-19 and those merely suspected to be ill have been told not to leave their homes, even with precautions, for 14 days. Sound advice. But in practice, some people live alone and need food, and there are ways to get it, outside the home, without contacting another person. Some people may live in a remote area where walks won't endanger anyone. And so on. Nonetheless, patients and those they live with who leave home for any reason face judge-mandated isolation orders and a GPS ankle monitor in some parts of the Bluegrass State. In Jefferson County, home to Louisville, health administrators have requested court orders and ankle monitors for at least 4 people. The first monitor went to a 66-year-old man who left his home after being diagnosed but before receiving a court order to stay at home. After that, 2 people who lived together got the same treatment even though only one had been diagnosed with COVID-19, according to the Louisville Courier-Journal. One was ordered confined after taking a walk, the Courier-Journal reported, and the other because based on a phone call, they were.
Another major concern I have is how can these people get food when they live on their own and they may not leave a certain perimeter? Can they still get food? I'm just tuning into this. I had to take care of the show all the time. Thank you all for your likes, subscribes and shares on other platforms and on YouTube. It's so important, especially that petition. Please share it so everybody can sign the petition. Keep vaccination voluntary, specifically electroporation and gene-drive extinction technology vaccines that the scientists want a moratorium on. Everything is explained in the petition on gopetition.com.
Thought to be out of the house. It appears that in Louisville, COVID-19 patients and their family members are being closely tracked even before being given an explicit order to stay in. A 4th Louisville resident, also not diagnosed with COVID-19 but merely living with someone who had been, got a court-ordered GPS tracking monitor last week. In Abilene, Texas, city leaders came close to requiring an Abilene Christian University professor to wear an ankle monitor while he was awaiting a COVID-19 test result. City Manager Robert Hanna.
What I'd also like to know is if you all knew about these ankle tracking bracelets. If you knew already, it was produced 3 months ago or so, this article. Thanks to 5G genocide. I know about this, otherwise I wouldn't have known.
Said at a press conference that this had in fact happened, then later said otherwise. In some places, and likely more soon, health authorities are giving the addresses of all people diagnosed with COVID-19 to 911 dispatchers, to be shared with cops, firefighters, and emergency responders should any be called to a coronavirus patient's address. In northern Kentucky, dispatchers have been instructed to give police a heads up if they are headed out to talk with a person at an address where a confirmed COVID-19 patient lives, the Cincinnati Enquirer noted on March 27. In Oklahoma, Gov. Kevin Stitt signed an executive order last week saying his state can share COVID-19 patient addresses with medics and law enforcement, despite it normally being barred by medical privacy law. Top Articles 1-5 Kanye West launches a presidential campaign of Christian morality. Massachusetts has been doing this statewide since the second week of March, Alabama since March 23. Police unions in Minnesota, Illinois, and New Jersey are now pushing for the same disclosures. At first blush, the rationale, police need protection from a contagious disease, makes sense. But this could be said about so many diseases, which is why police and medics already take precautions. And with huge numbers of COVID-19 patients being asymptomatic or taking days or weeks to develop symptoms, police officers should currently be taking extra precautions around everyone, anyway. Montgomery County, Ohio, Sheriff Rob Strack, whose department is not seeking addresses of COVID-19 patients, told reporters, "We've been dealing with people who have had infectious diseases for years that we haven't known about because of confidentiality rules. Providing police with patient addresses risks extrajudicial surveillance and harassment and patient identities getting out in the wider community. Yet many folks would like to see some patient info made even more widely available." Massachusetts Gov. Charlie Baker has been taking heat from local media and health officials for not requiring the release of city and town-specific demographic data on COVID-19 patients, something that could amount to doxing patients in smaller areas. Other state leaders aren't as cautious. Georgia, for instance, keeps an online list of the age, sex, and county of every COVID-19 patient who has died. COVID-19 patients and those they live with aren't the only ones facing privacy-invading police hoopla right now, of course. A lot of locales are instituting coronavirus curfews, even though these make little sense beyond security theater. The virus isn't less likely to spread during daytime hours. All a curfew does is ensure everyone has less time and space in which to do socially distanced exercise and essential errands. Well, that and giving authorities another excuse to harass residents who do have to leave their homes at night. In New Orleans' Acadia Parish, authorities recently announced that anyone outside between 9 p.m. and 6 a.m. will have to present a permission slip from their employer or else be given a citation. To alert citizens it's time to get inside, police in the Louisiana city of Crowley played the siren from the movie The Purge that signals murder and mayhem are legal all night. They have since apologized. So far, we're not hearing too many stories of police overreach on curfews and stay-at-home orders. It's in everybody's best interest to get voluntary compliance, and most of us are trying to approach it that way. Art Acevedo, president of the Major Cities Chiefs Association, recently told USA Today. Like Acevedo, police units across the country claim to be focusing right now on education, not enforcement, but right now should be cause for concern. The shelf life on this goodwill approach will likely fade as quarantines, business shutdowns, and other aspects of our new outbreak reality drag on. Chuck Wexler, executive director of the Police Executive Research Forum, told USA Today that while the best outcome is to get people to voluntarily comply, we're just on the front end of this thing. I fear the public's patience is going to be stretched as time goes on. And so will the patience of police who keep seeing colleagues fall ill and die from COVID-19. To the extent that cops are likely to take this out on COVID-19 patients and curfew violators in their communities, their ire will be misplaced. If police can't get the personal protective equipment they need, then their own departments and governments are to blame, not sick or similarly stressed community members also harmed by government missteps. It's certainly not COVID-19 patients who are requiring cops to risk their health by handing out parking tickets and policing minor crimes. If we want to avoid sick cops, community spread, and more police overreach and abuse, we should be thinking about how to create social distancing between police officers and their communities. Reason.com. To keep COVID-19 patients home, some U.S. states weigh house arrest tech. Visit my YouTube channels, Try Something. Vegetarian, Perfect Society and the Future channel on YouTube. Visit my YouTube channels, Visit my YouTube channel. Visit my YouTube channels. Visit my YouTube channels, Try Something. UK.Reuters.com. To keep COVID-19 patients home, some U.S. states weigh house arrest tech. Raphael Satter 5 minutes read, Washington, Reuters. How do you ensure that someone sick with COVID-19 stays home? File photo, Shadow Track Technology. SO Shadow Watch, a wrist worn device intended to keep track of offenders or defendants under house arrest or on pre-trial release, is seen in this handout photo in Covington.
If it uses cancer cell phone radiation, I cannot use it if it uses microwave radiation. I'm electrohypersensitive, and it's recognized in Sweden. And why is that still not recognized in Europe and in the US? Electrohypersensitive people get headaches, they faint, they start shaking. So we know that it's harmful also because of the reproducible tests, blood tests that I've talked about in my previous broadcast that we can do ourselves so that we're 100% certain 5G and microwave radiation is a health hazard, and they are lying about it to reduce the global population. Okay?
Louisiana, U.S., May 6, 2020. Shadow Track Technologies, hand out via Reuters. As the United States begins reopening its economy, some state officials are weighing whether house arrest monitoring technology, including ankle bracelets or location tracking apps, could be used to police quarantines imposed on coronavirus carriers. But while the tech has been used sporadically for U.S. quarantine enforcement over the past few weeks, large-scale rollouts have so far been held back by a big legal question: can officials impose electronic monitoring without an offense or a court order? Case in point is Hawaii, which considered the sweeping use of GPS-enabled ankle bracelets or smartphone tracking apps to enforce stay-at-home orders given to arriving air passengers. According to Ronald Couchy, the president of the Hawaii State Senate, Couchy said Hawaiian officials were concerned.
So the problem I have with it is not so much a GPS tracker that doesn't use any cancer cell phone radiation, it doesn't use microwave radiation, but the problem I have with it is that the tests are too unreliable, and that's even found by Google. Where is the PCR test here? Not 100% accurate at present. It is thought to detect approximately 70% of coronavirus infections. A negative test does not mean that you stop self-isolating if you have coronavirus symptoms. Tests are completely voluntary. They claim tests are voluntary, and they're not talking about false positives, which is what they make money from. And we saw that also with the Ebola tests, and then Merck came with their Ebola vaccine that contaminated people with Ebola virus. Covered by the Lancet. I've put the link in the description in previous videos. So if you haven't got that, I'm not posting it again now. Check my other videos on my channel. Adverse reactions.
That many travelers were flouting the state's 14-day quarantine order, putting the archipelago's inhabitants at risk. But he said that the plan for mass tracking of incoming travelers, inspired by similar technology in place in South Korea, was put on the back burner after the Hawaii Attorney General's office raised concerns. America is America, Couchy told Reuters. There are certain rights and freedoms. In response to written questions to the Attorney General's office, Hawaii's COVID-19 Joint Information Center said the various ideas being evaluated for tracking those under mandatory quarantine in response to the COVID-19 pandemic are right now just that, ideas. Similar ideas have already been executed in a few other states, albeit on a much smaller scale. 7 people.
So then we can also think about whether it's better to sign that stay-at-home order or whatever they have, so that we don't get an effing ankle bracelet everywhere we go, or don't go anymore.
Who broke quarantine rules in Louisville, Kentucky were court ordered to wear GPS tracking devices manufactured by Colorado-based Scram Systems, according.
I can't advise anything yet because I don't know what's in the document they had to sign. But I think it's all part of illegal, disproportional, thus unconstitutional coronavirus measures. And that is also because of the fact that they still haven't tested the effectiveness and safety of colloidal silver. And I've shown the studies that prove beyond any reasonable doubt colloidal silver destroys SARS-CoV-2, and air ionizers and tea tree oil. There are scientific documents about these things online. And they also destroy the SARS-CoV-2 virus. Tea tree oil is antiviral, that's scientifically proven. If that destroys the virus is another matter, but there are people that claim the air ionizers and colloidal silver both destroy this virus, SARS-CoV-2. And I've covered the scientific document, so check my broadcast if you can't find it.
To Amy Hess, the city's chief of public services. She told Reuters that while she would rather not have had to use the devices at all, state law permitted the imposition of home confinement to protect public health. We don't want to take away people's freedoms, but at the same time we have a pandemic, she said. In West Virginia's capital, Charleston, Kanawha County Sheriff Mike Rutherford told Reuters.
So these people are not looking for a cure. Bill Gates made clear it's got to go to 7 billion people. So they have no intention of curing the people, just making money. And 3 months ago he knew that already in his video on his own channel. And that picture is also from gatesnotes.com or whatever, with that book about meddling with statistical data, etc. So I think it's clear from that, and it's about millions, billions of dollars, and he's a businessman, not a doctor, like Tedros Adhanom. He's a doctor in philosophy, but not a medical doctor, so they're both not MDs. So why would they use these people? We can check Bill Gates' history. The acute flaccid paralysis cases due to the Bill and Melinda Gates sponsored oral polio vaccine. The vaccine that caused 47,500 cases of AFP, which is worse than polio according to sources online. And then you shouldn't believe anything anybody writes, but the government should do an investigation to see if that's correct. And then arrest them, basically. At least make sure that they're not creating 7 billion deadly vaccines to reduce the global population to 500 million. So sign that petition, y'all. It's very important. Let's continue.
His force had leased 10 additional location monitoring ankle bracelets from Geo Group Incorporated at the outset of the epidemic to be.
What's also interesting is the CEO of AstraZeneca. Europe has bought 400 million vaccines. I did a broadcast about it as well. And of course he already knows. Basically he said he hopes that the vaccine will stay effective for a year, because it may not interfere with these 7 billion vaccines Bill Gates has planned, of course.
In 4 months, the U.S. was transformed into an obedient socialist country.
On the safe side, although he said they've so far just sat on the shelf. Industry executives including Shadow Track Technologies Incorporated. President Robert Magalletta, whose Louisiana-based company supplies nearly 250 clients across the criminal justice system, said they had fielded calls from state and local governments about repurposing their tools for quarantine enforcement, although they wouldn't name the prospective buyers. Chris Keaton, of Arkansas-based ECEL, said he had recently been approached by a state agency that wanted to adapt his detainee tracking smartphone app for quarantine enforcement. He said the changes the agency requested were purely cosmetic, including swapping out the word client, ECEL's term for arrestees, with the word patient. They just wanted to reskin our app, he said. Uncharted territory. The industry has two main ways of keeping track of offenders. One is through the traditional ankle bracelet, a battery-powered device which is fastened to a person's leg and is monitored through GPS. The other is through a smartphone app, either used in conjunction with facial or voice recognition technology to make sure it's attached to the right person, or, as with the app made by ECEL, tethered via Bluetooth to a fitness tracker-style wristband to ensure it stays on or near the person it is meant to follow.
It's going to have to go to 7 billion people.
A QR code-enabled version of the app and wristband solution is already being used in Hong Kong to enforce quarantines on incoming travelers. Poland uses a facial recognition-powered version of the technology that regularly prompts users to upload a selfie to prove they're indoors. Other governments are weighing similar technology, said Magaleto of ShadowTrack, who said he was in talks with half a dozen countries in Asia, Europe, and Latin America. Slideshow, 3 images in a call with reporters last month. Jay Stanley of the American Civil Liberties Union noted that several governments were toying with the idea of using smartphones as ad hoc ankle monitors. As a technological matter that probably would be effective as long as too much precision is not expected, Stanley said, but he cautioned that enforcement approach to public health often tends to backfire. Magaleto also foresaw thorny issues as far as the United States was concerned, saying he was less comfortable tracking patients with COVID-19 than he was enforcing house arrests for convicted criminals. Can you actually constitutionally monitor someone who's innocent? He asked. It's uncharted territory.
Okay, so then we can move on to another article that was Reuters, uk.reuters.com. Perhaps it's interesting to read a Wikipedia article about COVID-19 surveillance at this time. Syndromic surveillance is done based on the symptoms. I'll Google it. Syndromic.
COVID-19 surveillance involves monitoring the spread of the coronavirus disease in order to establish the patterns of disease progression. The World Health Organization, WHO, recommends active surveillance, with focus of case finding, testing and contact tracing in all transmission scenarios. 1. COVID-19 surveillance is expected to monitor epidemiological trends, rapidly detect new cases, and based on this information, provide epidemiological information to conduct risk assessment and guide disease preparedness. Syndromic surveillance. Syndromic surveillance is done based on the symptoms of an individual who corresponds to COVID-19. As of March 2020, the WHO recommends the following case definitions. 1. Suspect case, a patient with acute respiratory illness, fever and at least one sign, symptom of respiratory disease, for example cough, shortness of breath, and a history of travel to or residence in a location reporting community transmission of COVID-19 disease during the 14 days prior to symptom onset, or a patient with any acute respiratory illness and having been in contact with a confirmed or probable COVID-19 case in the last 14 days prior to symptom onset, or a patient with severe acute respiratory illness, fever and at least one sign, symptom of respiratory disease, for example cough, shortness of breath, and requiring hospitalization, and in the absence of an alternative diagnosis that fully explains the clinical presentation probable case.
So that was a suspect case, but some people have chronic conditions and they cough, some of the people all year round, so that's no. And of course it can be a number of other things. There are over 1 million viruses, and influenza and the common cold doesn't stop either, of course, because of COVID-19. So be careful with misjudging people due to this supposed pandemic. WHO declared this a pandemic, and they've changed not their definition but their description of pandemic into a description that doesn't entail how many deaths there must be. So the previous definition listed there have to be loads of deaths, massive numbers of deaths, to be able to declare the level 6 pandemic, and they've changed that, so now even the common cold, as long as it's viral enough, can be declared a pandemic, and then they can impose all their measures again, which will these measures will kill the coronavirus, measures will kill more people than the virus, many scientists claim. And I think they're very convincing. So in the long term, this will kill, the coronavirus measures will kill a lot more people than the virus.
A suspect case for whom testing for the COVID-19 virus is inconclusive, or a suspect case for whom testing could not be performed for any reason. Confirmed case, a person with laboratory confirmation of COVID-19 infection, irrespective of clinical signs and symptoms. Contact.
And we have to check to what extent they are lying with these statistics. When Bill Gates is even promoting that book, what was the title again? I will check it in the pictures, screenshots. I have it ready. Lie with statistics. Perhaps I'm loading the picture. It's taking a lot longer than it usually does. And everything on the picture show, of course, the new one I made. Establishment, I called it. Reconnection successful, it says. So they have temporarily closed Open Broadcaster software down. So I don't know if this is the second half of this broadcast. Anyway, they do that with DDoS attacks, etc. So it's possible that my internet won't function anymore after this broadcast, or during the broadcast, that they simply cut it off with hackers they hire. So that may not even be done by NSA, MI6, etc., but others. And let's get this one off. Ah, there it is. Lie with statistics. Oh wow. So I was right. It's that simple. Okay.
A person who experienced any one of the following exposures during the 2 days before and the 14 days after the onset of symptoms of a probable or confirmed case: face-to-face contact with a probable or confirmed case within 1 meter and for more than 15 minutes, direct physical contact with a probable or confirmed case, direct care for a patient with probable or confirmed COVID-19 disease without using proper personal protective equipment, other situations as indicated by local risk assessments. The WHO recommends reporting probable and confirmed cases of COVID-19 infection within 48 hours of identification. 1. Countries should report on a case-by-case basis as far as possible, but, in case of limitation in resources, aggregate weekly reporting is also possible. 2. Some organizations have created crowdsourced apps for syndromic surveillance, where people can report their symptoms to help researchers map areas with concentration of COVID-19 symptoms.
I was kind of busy, so I have to look at these points. Suspected case, probable case, a suspect case for whom testing for the COVID-19 virus is inconclusive, or a suspect case for whom testing could not be performed for any reason. So then the test is voluntary, but then you're a probable case if you refuse to be tested. Confirmed case, I presume, I'm just assuming stuff now. Confirmed case, quote, a person with laboratory confirmation of COVID-19 infection, irrespective of clinical signs and symptoms. So I will refuse to test if it's voluntary, and a probable case is better than being a confirmed case. I don't know to what extent, quote, treatment, unquote, is mandatory when you're a confirmed case. But I suspect that these people are even worse off because they have no cure yet. Though we have one, so we know that in reality we have no virus, no coronavirus, SARS-CoV-2 in our body. And I've covered colloidal silver in previous broadcasts. So we must spread colloidal silver awareness. And protesting may be allowed in the Netherlands again. So I think we need more protests against mandatory vaccination. That's their plan. It's gotta go to 7 billion people. Otherwise they don't make that amount that they are promised, etc. Ah, my father's coming up with dinner. And of course protests against the disproportionate coronavirus measures. I think they will cost a lot more lives than racism from either side. And it's a much bigger problem at the moment. And people can join my White Lives, anti-racist White Lives Matter movement, the new White Lives Matter movement, by emailing antiracist_White Lives Matter at AOL.com. I haven't checked that yet, and I saw that there are only 8 signatories to the petition. I will keep your name secret. GoPetition.com. And the petition starts over here at We the Undersigned, and right now there are still 8 signatures. Thank you all for signing it, and I hope that somebody with loads of views can cover that petition so it gets millions of people that sign it. Millions of signatures. Don't know if that's the right expression when they're not really signing with an autograph. And I don't know to what extent people use their real name, etc. on these websites, or if there are robots to do this type of thing. So I'm not using the other version that I made first. I think this GoPetition.com looks better, more room for text. And well, I think if millions of people sign this, that can prevent their planned population reduction with killer vaccines. And I will not take that vaccine, not even for $1 billion. So Bill Gates would say, well, I give you $1 billion if you take this vaccine, and I give you a bill. I wouldn't take it in reality. Wouldn't take the vaccine. Test me if you don't believe me. You Skype Prologic 999. And in this petition I explain why not, with all the links you need. Also the race for COVID-19 vaccine explained. The video in which Bill Gates says it's gotta go to 7 billion people already 3 months ago. So how did he know that back then? And then all these wrong simulations I've heard about. Rockefeller Foundation funded Mengele, now COVID-19 National Testing Plan, Nazi Eugenics Wiki. Perhaps it's better to read this because it's kind of crucial that there are false negatives. So I must refuse your test, you know. On with the wiki article. Were we already finished with that? Yeah, I think so. Virological surveillance done by using molecular tests for COVID-19. WHO has published resources for laboratories on how to perform testing for COVID-19 in the European Union. Laboratory confirmed cases of COVID-19 are reported within 24 hours of identification. Let's see if there are other people that uploaded It's Just a Mask. I think it's a great video. British would say it's just a mask, I think. 355,000 views, the United Spot 1 week ago. It's just a mask compilation. So we've studied the science that shows masks are neither effective nor safe on primarydoctor.org. You can find that link via my channel, so even if you're on the website it might be pretty hard to find all these studies that prove beyond any reasonable doubt masks are neither effective nor safe. And why are they never talking about P3 filter masks, for example? Is it really about population reduction and anything that can prevent the spread, and their subsequent population reduction with vaccines is blocked? Can anybody disprove to me that they're going to use these vaccines to do it? They already have laws in place, a legal framework, so that these people are legally immune when everybody dies from the vaccine, and they simply claim COVID-19. So I'm totally against compulsory vaccination by the military, which is their plan according to sources online that I might not even be able to reveal. So some sources we have to keep secret, others we can reveal. The Joker is just a mask. And I've covered that article, not Joe Imbriano, but Joe Kennedy. This is the article. It's not about masks. It's just 5G, you guys. It's for the Earth, for the greater good. So this is the article, and it's very well done. You can find the video on this website as well. This is the original, probably. joekennedy.biz. It's not about masks. July 16th, 2020. Are face masks healthy? COVID-19 face masks virus, you must comply. I've also done a broadcast about the effect on the immune system. Anyway, I think about it now is I used to think face masks are better. They decrease the risk of breathing in these particles. Unfortunately, the tests show otherwise, prove otherwise. And I have to put this box on my water bed because dinner is coming up. So I've changed my mind, at least about the surgical masks and especially the cotton masks. I thought they also look cooler, I think. And why not a P3 filter mask or respirator rather than a mask which has a valve making breathing much easier? But the point is that people breathe in CO2 with every breath, because once they've breathed out their mask, the area behind their mask is totally filled with depleted air. And if you'd measure it with an oxygen meter, the alarm could go off. There are videos about it on YouTube as well. And supposedly Bill Gates wrote in the chat, wear a mask, finger to the right, wear a mask, inhale CO2, die slowly. And I don't know if that was the real Bill Gates, but it's somebody on YouTube called Bill Gates, so. I continue cleaning my desk. I'll close the door, otherwise I'll get problems with my voice. So an air cleaner with an ionizer is best. And one theory about the US having 43 times more COVID-19 cases and 30 times more COVID-19 deaths than China is that they use more air conditioning, and that it has nothing to do with the Starlink satellites of Elon Musk, 5G satellites. Because they also stand above the Netherlands, for example. People can photograph them. So that's how we know with reasonable certainty that they're real. It's easy to prove that the Earth is spherical, ball-shaped, oblong, oblique, whatever you want to call it. So the Earth is not flat. Some people might think that the Earth is flat because there were giants upon the Earth and they had extremely large feet. But that story is fake news, you could argue. Of course, I think in lots of cases it's BS because they're not really news producers. It's clear they're not CNN. And often they reflect on these mainstream media news stories. So then it's clear they're not news producers, journalists with license, etc. And when producing videos about this, I think it's good to have a good disclaimer. Which makes clear that we do have to comply. We may disagree, but comply with all the measures, and otherwise we can be fined, or worse, there might be other people that see us as rascals or evil people if we don't wear a mask, for example. So these people believe in the lie that it will curb the spread, etc. And because of all these people with population reduction quotes in books, and these $1 million Georgia Guidestones in their speeches, and actions that speak louder than words, these depleted uranium kits, etc., they have to disprove it to us, basically. And I also don't believe that sick people have more children than healthy people. I'm still cleaning up my desk. So I did videos about this article also. Though I don't endorse Trump, I think this is pretty cool. The only thing that I had a question about was tracking your food or whatever, what you eat, to control every aspect of your life. But then my thought is, besides controlling what the cows eat, taking out egg whites, eiwit in Dutch, there's a thing with the farmers in the Netherlands going on. And unfortunately the Netherlands fell for Al Gore's carbon tax scam, the anthropogenic global warming hoax. So I hope they can save money on that. What did I want to say? They're selectively erasing memory also. So Al Gore's carbon tax scam paid for his anthropogenic global warming hoax story by George Soros. That's what it includes basically. So lots of farmers have gone bankrupt, they've committed suicide, and people are dependent on these supermarkets, etc. So when the farmers are out of business, bankrupt, and the lockdown is imposed, the countries cannot import food from other countries anymore, so there already are food shortages in many countries. So we have to store storable food right now: peanut butter, rice, peas, dried peas, and other storable foods for months, possibly even till 2022. There may be a blackout, a fake solar storm. NASA Freemasons have predicted, and it can be an EMP in reality, and it will knock out the electrical pumps of our tap water supply. So we also need a water filter to be able to drink rainwater, because people need water daily. So they already control to a great extent what we eat. So when the supermarkets are locked down, what will people eat then? And they may also use predictive programming. I covered that video of that lady that they thought of that she was insane about eating babies. And they didn't know her name, they only knew that she was from LaRouche pack or whatever, LaRouche group. And perhaps that's because they were also exposing this anthropogenic global warming hoax. So we back it up with science, and Piers Corbyn has some good points as well. But there are many other scientists that deserve some attention, who know that they're scamming the population to death to reduce the global population, that the people who claim sustainability must be achieved have made clear that the global population needs to be reduced to 500 million, therefore sustainability equals democide. And the book quotes $1 Million Georgia Guidestones, speeches and actions that speak louder than words prove beyond any reasonable doubt that there is a conspiracy to reduce the global population. I shouldn't talk when I've inhaled, I normally never do that. So of course they can also track that with synthetic telepathy, they can even see through our eyes, so they're not just reading our minds, etc. As explained in the Maleg patent of 1974, the apparatus to remotely monitor and alter brainwaves. They do it with scalar technology. It's not microwave harassment, but scalar wave harassment. That's why people cannot protect themselves, though they can shield themselves against the harmful effects. They can shield themselves against the cancer cell phone radiation from the death towers by putting aluminum foil on the wall, or other shielding materials that are very expensive and less effective in many cases, if not all cases. And sometimes people can buy the mesh, aluminum mesh, and that can also be put on the window so that you still have a view. But besides reading the mind, they're also controlling the human mind to monitor and alter brainwaves. So I think it's best to stop this broadcast now. My father is coming in with dinner. So I'll put the links in the description. Thank you all for watching. please spread this important video and other even more important videos. The petition especially, I need help with that, to get millions of people to sign the petition. And I think that depends on somebody with lots of views, and they themselves might also be vaccinated to death. I really think that is much better than a nuclear war, which would also destroy the infrastructure. And these people are bloody serious about a population reduction to 500 million. I've attempted to press charges against them, more about it in my previous broadcasts. So thank you all for watching. Do healing good stuff, and spread knowledge, spread the ideas that you think and the truth that you think can alter this timeline to create that perfect society we all want, in which we all will live happily eternally. Possible because of scalar technology, the neural networks, time travel technology. I know time travel is possible because I've had precognitive visions, but I really have to prepare for dinner now, so I'll check if there's something in the chat. Not yet. So thank you all for watching. Kiss for single ladies who would like one, and see you all next time on Perfect Society. May peace be with you all. Love, peace and happiness.